Hi there everyone, I'm Danny, and welcome to this episode of All Monsters Go to Space. Today, I'm talking about a day that some do their best to avoid, Friday the 13th. Throughout mainly Western culture, this day has been said to be unlucky and has various origins linked to it, from the Knights Templar to the Last Supper, and even a version where Loki was being his usual trickster self. This particular day can happen once or up to 3 times a year, and this year, 2024, it has fallen in both September and December. For those who may be curious to figure out if there will be a Friday 13th in that year, you can do so by seeing if that month starts on a Sunday. I came across a few origins for this superstition. Starting off, I'll cover a mischievous god that has had a real boom in popularity in recent years. Loki, the Norse god of trickery and mischief. At one event, 12 of the gods were having a dinner party. Loki had not been invited, but decided to turn up anyway, as he does. Balder was at this dinner, and anyone who already knows this myth will know where this is going. Loki had found out Balder's only weakness. At the event, the god would throw stones, twigs, and other items at the invulnerable god, knowing he couldn't be harmed. Loki went to Hoder, the blind brother of Balder, and asked if he wanted to take part rather than having to sit back. As anyone who is excluded from anything might know, to feel included can be a wondrous thing. He took the spear he had been given and threw it, not knowing what would happen. He thought his brother would be unharmed as he always was. Unfortunately, the spear was made of mistletoe wood, the only thing that Balder could be killed by. This myth of the 13th guest causing such a tragedy to happen, the first sign of the coming of Ragnarok, has been said to be the origin. But this leads me to another origin myth that involves a dinner, the Last Supper. As most will know, Jesus ate at the table with all 12 of his disciples. Including himself, the number of people at this table was 13. Judas was one of these disciples and the one who would betray Jesus and lead to his crucifixion, an event which happened on a Friday, and from what I could find, these were always done on Fridays. It's also said that Judas was the last person to arrive at the meal. There is also a belief in some places that the day that Adam and Eve took the fruit from the tree of knowledge and got themselves kicked out of the Garden of Eden was also a Friday. Both the Loki and the Last Supper origin have led to a superstition that there should not be 13 people at a table, and if there are, the first to get up and leave brings misfortune to themselves or others. This particular superstition seems to have originated around 1774, but its authenticity is unclear as its sources couldn't be found. Another potential origin for this superstition is the Knights Templar. On October 13, 1307, a Friday, King Philip IV had hundreds of members of the Knights Templar arrested and put to death. The king had decided they would be charged for a number of illegal things they had allegedly done, such as spitting on the cross and worshipping a false idol. It is thought that none of this was actually true, but because the king was indebted to the knights for their help during the war with England, he had to find a way to rid himself of them. So he jumped on the false rumours that were circulating. They had also been accused of fraud, indecent acts, and secrecy. This origin was also brought to the fore by Dan Brown's novel The Da Vinci Code, and its place as the origin seems to have been cemented. And last but not least, it may have been believed that witches and their gatherings had been the origin. Many groups or covens consist or once consisted of 12 members. If there was a 13th member within the group, it was said to be the devil. This origin seems to have come mainly from Rome. An interesting thing I came across was that a club was created to laugh in the face of this superstition. In 1881, US Civil War veteran Captain William Fowler made a dinner cabaret club named the 13 Club. The first meeting was held on Friday 13th at 8:13 p.m., although from my research this date actually fell on a Thursday. 13 people would come together to enjoy an evening of good food, having walked under a ladder into the 13th room and sat in piles of spilled salt. There were even a few people of note who had actually been part of these clubs that had popped up throughout America. 4 presidents were members at some point: Chester Arthur, Benjamin Harrison, Grover Cleveland, and Theodore Roosevelt. According to the Oxford University Press Dictionary Superstitions, the first documented reference to Friday 13th specifically, and not just the day of the week itself, wasn't until 1913. In Chaucer's Canterbury Tales, written in 1392, in Nun's Priest's Tale, it mentions Friday. Quote, "And on a Friday fill all this mischance." There are a few pieces of literature from this time onwards that have mentioned Fridays being unlucky. So from this, it seems the day and the number being unlucky seemed to have once been separate and then bled into one as time went on. This unlucky day has been featured in many pieces of media and pop culture. In 1834, the play Le Finesse de Gribouille features a character who says, "I was born on a Friday, December 13th, 1813, from which come all of my misfortunes." The thing is, when I looked up this date, it doesn't fall on a Friday, it's on a Monday. But they didn't have Google back then to check. In 1907, T.W. Lawson had his novel Friday the 13th published, and it has been thought that it may have been another reason for the popularity of this superstition. In the novel, a stockbroker uses people's fear of the day to cause havoc on the stock market and make a large profit. The funny thing is that in 1989, there was a small stock market crash on a Friday 13th. Life seemed to have imitated art here. And I think, at least in Western media, the most famous mention of this unlucky day would be the Friday 13th franchise, where a hockey mask wearing killer armed with a machete kills anyone in their wake. And I am aware that in the first film it was Pamela Voorhees, and Jason doesn't start wearing the infamous mask until the third installment. There were also some notable events throughout history that happened, whether because of superstition or because of coincidence, who knows. There was the stock market crash that I mentioned earlier. The British submarine HMS K-13 sank on 29th of January 1917 and was later renamed, but bad luck still seemed to follow. And the rocket Apollo 13 launched in 1970, where its oxygen tank exploded on April 13th. Luckily, it did reach Earth safely on the 17th. Buckingham Palace was hit by German bombs on September 13th, 1940. Bangladesh suffered a cyclone in November 1970, and this natural disaster took the lives of an estimated 300,000 people. And so many more incidents and events have been recorded. Because of the superstition of the number 13, many buildings will skip labeling a room or a floor with this number and either give it a name, another designation, or even a symbol like a heart. Some places may use this floor for a different use, for example, a maintenance floor or a pool, and would label it with something like an M. In some conspiracy theories, it is thought that this floor would be used to keep secret documents or used as research labs. Also, streets, cruise ships, and any person or company naming something, like a rocket, may even avoid using this number. I can imagine that this could lead to some confusion though, especially for people who don't come from places that have this superstition, like China, for example, and for emergency services who may be called to a 13th floor to find it is labelled differently. Vancouver city planners have gotten rid of this practice of omitting the labelling of floors 4 and 13 because of this reason. Even in Ireland, vehicle registration plates avoid this number. The first two numbers show the year that the car was registered. For example, 10 would be a car registered in 2010. There were concerns that if a vehicle was registered with the number 13, people would not be willing to buy the car, leading to a massive decrease in sales. So a system was introduced that would register cars with 131 for the first 6 months and 132 for the last. Some people may suffer from a true fear of this day or number. It's called triskaidekaphobia. Franklin D. Roosevelt and Stephen King are said to have suffered from this phobia. It was even a storyline in an episode of the original Charmed series. One of the sisters, Piper, is concerned about this day and goes out of her way to get charms and do routines to try and avoid anything bad happening. Unbeknownst to her, there is a demon who goes after witches and uses their fears against them. This episode seems to harken back to witches being connected to this day specifically. There was a poll taken in 2007 by Gallup, an American analytics and research company, where they found that 13% of those interviewed would be bothered by having a room on the 13th floor of a hotel, and 9% would be so uncomfortable with this that they would actually ask for a different floor or room. This fear can even affect real estate. Some people may not wish to have a house or apartment on the 13th street or have the number in its postcode or house number. In Russia, they found that apartments on the 13th floor were less likely to sell. There is even the thought that more accidents happen on this day. This could be down to the fact that if something does go wrong, it feels good to blame something. But there has also been the belief that people are less likely to have an accident on this day because they're more likely to be careful. There are a couple of similar dates and number superstitions throughout the world like this one. In Greece and some Hispanic countries, Tuesday 13th is the unlucky day. This is due to Ares, or Mars if you prefer the Roman name, the god of war and destruction, having an influence over Tuesdays. It also happened that the Fourth Crusade took over Constantinople on Tuesday 13th, 1204, and then in 1453, on Tuesday 29th, Constantinople fell to the Ottomans. There may also be the connection that Triti, meaning the third day of the week, is linked to bad luck, as it is said to be something that always comes in threes. In Italy, it's Friday the 17th that's considered unlucky. It's because the Roman numerals can be arranged to say Vichy, meaning I have lived, or the euphemism, I am dead. Here, they may avoid this number by omitting it from streets, floors, hotel rooms, and cruise ship decks. In China and throughout different countries in Asia, the number 4 is avoided, since it sounds like the word for death, shi in Mandarin, sa in Korean, and shi in Japanese. Again, buildings, streets, houses, and even phone models would try to avoid this number, either skipping it altogether or using a symbol. In South Korea, the 4th floor in some places will be labeled with an F. On the other hand, though, for some 13 is a lucky number. Apparently, Taylor Swift would write a 13 on her hand before a performance, and I don't know if she still does. So if someone out there knows, let me know. In France, it was such a lucky number that it would be on postcards and charms. This was the case until the First World War swept the world. In Cantonese-speaking regions, it is considered lucky because it sounds like the phrase meaning sure to live. And quite a few sports players will wear the number 13 on their jerseys, for example, Dan Marino of the Miami Dolphins, whose jersey is now in the Hall of Fame, and NBA star Wilt Chamberlain. There is also said to be a link to pagan belief due to the Norse sky god associated with marriage and motherhood, Frigg, who lends her name to Friday, day of Frigg. She is also a fertility goddess and gave her protection to homes, marriages, and families. It was believed to be very fortuitous to marry on a Friday. It can also be linked to lunar cycles and even menstrual cycles, as 13 of these will occur within a year. So let me know, what do you think of Friday 13th? Do you fear the day and have certain rituals to help you get through it? Do you enjoy a 13-course meal to snub your nose at such a day? Or is it a lucky day and number for you? Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!